Welcome to the Afghanistan Project Podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and my guest today is a young woman activist in Afghanistan. I've agreed not to use her name or to identify her in any way. We'll be calling her Amina to protect her identity today. Amina, I'm really excited to have you here so that you can share your story with our audience because it is so important to hear voices from Afghanistan right now, particularly from women who have been silenced and kind of hidden away by the Taliban since their rise to power. So thank you so much for joining me and being so brave and sharing your voice today.
Assalamu alaikum to you and your audience, and it's a great pleasure and honor for me to be here with you.
Well, let's get right to it. I'd love to hear about what your life was like as a woman before the Taliban came to power. How hard was it for women, for girls to get by under the former Afghan government?
Thank you. That's a great question to start with. Before the Taliban took over in Afghanistan, and I was practicing law, and I was member of Women Council in the city. And in addition, I was a contributor in University magazine. And regarding the question about the situation of women, I can say that the life wasn't like heaven for women even before the Taliban took over, but it was much better, and even with a lot of limits in the traditional society that Afghanistan had, women had a better life. Girls could study at school and in university. They could participate in many aspects of the society. We had female judges, female prosecutors, and female police officers. Women could participate in politics and take part in government system. We had women in parliament and female ministers, and a lot, and women who could sing and paint, and everyone could follow their dreams. But now the situation, none of these are possible to do, and none of these are happening, and women are allowed to do them under the Taliban regime.
It has been really devastating to watch that as an outsider, and to hear from women in more, one-on-one settings on social media say, about what it's like to lose all of that. What was it like for you to go from practicing law to not being able to participate in society?
Of course, it is difficult because it was a goal for me, and it was my dream to defend the victims and bring justice in the society that I grew, and I always see injustices everywhere. And now I cannot, and as a woman who was who was practicing to be a lawyer, but now I cannot pursue my career and my goals, and this is really difficult and horrible, and I don't know how to express it, my feelings about this.
It sounds really difficult. And I wondered too, a lot of women who've made it to these advanced careers and gotten an advanced education, they had to fight to get there. Did you have to fight to get your education, or did you have your family supporting you through that whole process? What was it like?
I was lived and grew in the last 20 years in the city, and I enjoyed freedom and rights to having access to a safe and proper education. I had my family support for my education, and I could study at the school and graduate from university. And I'm grateful for that, because that kind of education and family support lead me to try every way to serve my people and nation today in this hard time.
Yeah, it's an honor then to be able to keep up that tradition, and I know that we're going to talk later about your thoughts on what people can be doing in this time. And it's great to hear. I've heard a lot of hopelessness from women, and you do not sound like you're hopeless. Like you're just waiting. You're just waiting for the chance to get back at it, and that's really an amazing. I don't think I could keep that level of positivity given the environment that you're in. So I'm just really impressed by that. I'd love to go back to right before the Taliban took over. What was life like for you as, things were falling and, different provinces, different districts were falling to the Taliban? What was your life looking like?
Thank you. I always remember those days. It is with sad feeling because we were spending the majority of our time at the court, and for lawyers and judges and prosecutors who were working in courts who were directly in contact with the prisoners, and for some of them who had direct contact because of the cases with the Taliban. We all were afraid of the Taliban took over and they will release the prisoners from the jails. And as a woman, I was afraid that if the Taliban took over, I will lose what I had achieved at that time. Before that time, I was worried to not be able to work and not to work again in the court, and this was all the feelings that we had at that time.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What about during the fall? Were you nervous? I know that many prosecutors have lost their lives because the Taliban found them. Was that something that you were witnessing happening? Did you have to take extra precautions to protect yourself?
Indeed, because I heard a lot of stories of prosecutors who were involved with the justice system, who had directly impacted because they lost their lives because of the revenge of the prisoners in the Taliban. And I myself, I'm in hiding since the Taliban took over, and I cannot work and go out like many others.
I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm also glad that you're being safe, because it is devastating to still see every week, even in the West, we still see evidence of the reprisal campaigns that the Taliban is continuing on. So it is so important. And I think it's important for the audience to understand, this is not, this isn't made up. There's a very real concern that continues because the Taliban have not stopped looking for the people that they consider their enemies. Can you tell me in specifics, as many specifics as you're willing to share, about how your life changed when the Taliban did take over, outside of just living in hiding, your daily routine, things like that?
Yeah, of course. And I am a woman like millions of other women, and of course, my life also changed like many others. And from that time, practicing law became a dream for me again, for advocating and defending the victims, and um, my plans to bring justice is in the society that I was living in is taken away from me. And now I was a woman who was working all the day outside and communicating and dealing with a lot of people and helping them. And now I am just imprisoned at home and feel fears of my life. And I lost all of my rights, and I cannot even go out alone without a male chaperone. And this was this was never the thing that I wanted to have it in my future, and I never could imagine it that one day I will be imprisoned at home and I even cannot leave the house alone.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wanted that for Afghan women, and it still boggles my mind that the Western world has only had, words to say about that, and that there hasn't been more. I know the Western world worked really hard to bring education back to Afghan women, to help Afghan women, the maternal mortality rate, the birth rate, things like that, to help Afghan women to not have such a burden upon themselves and to be able to do things in society. And now that's all, it's for naught. And a whole half of the society is now indoors, imprisoned in their homes. And I wanted to ask you about the edicts that the Taliban have specifically made, because they started small. I'm trying to remember what the first anti-women edict was, and it's escaping me, but they progressively have gotten bigger and bigger. And so can you talk about how that progression happened, when you knew that your rights were going to go away, and how it looked when they started to go away bit by bit?
Thank you for this question. Since August 2021, Taliban have issued numerous edicts in which the majority of them directly targeted the every aspects of women's life in Afghanistan. And they started with banning female students from secondary school, and today we can see that they airbrushed women from the society, and they imprisoned them in their houses, and they it seems that like it is a system of government, and they are trying to maintain their dominance on their government by restricting women from everything. And I believe this is why that UN experts and other scholars, they are calling on these kind of inhuman acts, I believe gender apartheid, because how it is possible? This is a crime, and this is a crime, that what is happening towards me and against me and millions of other Afghan women, and it is a crimes against humanity, I believe. And because it is a characteristic of apartheid, I mean gender apartheid, state, that they gradually and systematically they restrict and ban a specific group, or for example in Afghanistan, women in female gender, from their life and movement and their rights to work and study and having excitement in parks and restaurant and gym and everywhere. And this is a real crime that is happening every day in Afghanistan.
Absolutely. And I do see some places where women are still, it looks like, allowed to work. I think the Taliban, that I've seen this, and I don't know if it's true because I'm not on the ground, but I think that there are women who are working with the Taliban to, like in prisons and things like that. And maybe even in like everyday policing. And I've heard that there are women at the airport doing security, because women need to be, helping women with security. But, that's not governance. That's not women making choices that, for the things that impact women in Afghanistan. Women can't vote anymore. Women can't, do any of the things that would let them have a role in determining what their future looks like. The Taliban have taken all of that away from them. And like you said, you can't go out without a chaperone. You can't go more than a certain number of kilometers away from your home. Women can't go to domestic violence shelters anymore if they're being beaten by their husband or family member. There are no more domestic violence shelters. It's prison now. That's where you go if you have a problem, which is just horrid because the stories of what's happening in Taliban prisons to women are heinous. So it is, I agree with that characterization that it's gender apartheid. And I'm hoping that the UN will agree with that and that they'll start to do something to make it better, because there's a lot of hopelessness, like I said earlier, and that does not bode well for the future of Afghanistan. A country needs its women. Women are more than just vessels to create more humans. And a country without a satisfied and participating female population is just not a country that's going to thrive, in my opinion. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
I agree with you, because before the Taliban took over, we had a significant percentage of women involved in who were working in the government, in the government system, in business, and in justice system, in every aspect. And yes, there are some women who are working and some in, for example, in government offices with the Taliban, like you said, in policing every day in airport and maybe some other places, but they are not all the society and they are not all the population who were working. And we have countless women who has lost their job because of the ban on working with the government or working in other parts of, organization and national and international. So I agree with you totally.
I think this reminds me of one of the Taliban's earliest edicts was they told women in the government ministries, don't come to work anymore. Send your husbands in your place. As if women and their husbands were just interchangeable. Like their husbands would just know how to do their wife's work. And did that really happen? Was that something that they really said?
Yes, dear mama, I hear that, but I don't have too much information to share about it.
Oh, well, it's just, for me, it was so silly. Like, they really just think that little of women that, oh, it's okay. We don't need you. Your husband can come in and do your job for you. Okay, Talib, I'll do that. I'll send my husband in my place. I wanted to ask you some specific, women's issue questions, because you're the first person that I've had where I can actually ask these questions. And I saw recently that the Taliban were still allowing some women journalists to report. They had to be veiled, I believe, but this was only on air, and I think that they were considering taking them off air. And so I wanted to ask, are any women journalists able to continue reporting from within Afghanistan, to your knowledge?
Actually, under the Taliban regime, there is no media and freedom of press, and when the topic is a violation of human rights and women's rights, even male journalists are not able to report freely. But yes, we can see some female presenters on TV and female journalists on TV shows to present news and different shows on the TV. But no one can talk about what is happening about, violation of human rights, abuses and oppression. I believe they are not free to do this. And because, the Taliban regime, they are monitoring everything. And so I believe if there is a journalist who is reporting, and particularly a female journalist reporting on these issues on human rights and women's rights, they are in hiding and they cannot express themselves freely and with freedom.
That's what I've heard too, and it's sad to hear. So, and I would be so interested to know what these reporters are saying, what the Taliban line sounds like. Is it, we're working so hard to get things up to, because you'll hear that sometimes from the apologists in the West. They'll say, well, the Taliban just, they have a lot to learn about governance. So it's going to take them some time, and there's always reasons to say, "Oh, it's okay. They're going to get there. They're going to learn how to be democratic and be, not misogynistic." And I wonder if that's what are these women saying when they are on TV? What kind of pro propaganda or propaganda pro Taliban information are they putting out there?
Of course, I want to tell you two things because one is about the female journalists, and they only can say the things that they are that makes the Taliban happy, and not the thing that the society and the Afghans want to hear from them. Or I mean, things and TV shows and news are not like it was the past, and I can say that since August 2021, there wasn't no interest for me personally to watch TV anymore. The second point is that yes, the Taliban may need time to learn how to govern the country and how to do things, but the important thing is that every day we are spending our time in prison. We are losing our time and our energy and our health. It is also is affected because of the mental health crisis. We have the suicide surge among women and girls, so about the lives that we lost. And so all these are important. While we are giving time for the Taliban to learn, in countless women and girls, they are losing every opportunity to study and to work and to improve and grow and have the ability and to serve our people and our nation in future. And I mean, regarding the education, and today more than 4 millions of girls are banned from studying, women and girls studying at a school and university, and it is almost 3 years. How can we fill these gaps? This gap while Taliban are learning about everything. And this is heartbreaking.
I agree 100%. And every year, it's not just a year, that's it feels like a far more substantial setback than 3 years at this point. You're talking about, when I talk to other Afghans, they say it's generations now. This is going to be a generational hole that Afghan women will have to get out of because of what the Taliban have done here. And you talked about the suicide epidemic, and I'd like to hear a little more about that. The Taliban have not wanted Western audiences to know about the suicidality inside the country. They've put out fake suicide statistics that are completely, if you look at even the few NGOs that are in the country and what they say about how many people are committing suicide inside of Afghanistan right now, they don't compute, they don't match up. So what are you hearing from within Afghanistan about women's mental health and just mental health in general?
Thank you for your question. After seeing this deep mental health crisis among women and girls and among people and women around me, and I joined a great team and then I was trained to be a mental health counselor and support other women. And through that, I heard many more horrific cases of women that their life, and they try to attempt to suicide because of the life had changed for them after the Taliban took over, and because the bans that the Taliban ordered on work and, for example, education, and there are a lot of reports that shows that there's a deep mental health crisis among women, and suicide attempts are mostly among female students. And I met one of my clients and who was attempted to suicide, and Alhamdulillah, she survived, and she is fine now, but it has some effect and with her health, and there are countless stories again. Regarding the mental health. I can say that a generation, like you said before, are suffering from mental health crisis.
I'm sorry to hear about that. I'm really heartened to hear that you're helping and that you got that training to be a mental health counselor. But I imagine that in itself is another weight to be added during this time. Or how do you feel about it? That's a lot to take on, somebody else's emotional trauma. Is that a hard thing to do?
Of course, when you are a woman in Afghanistan with all you are experiencing and witnessing all these, and it is very difficult. And I don't say that I don't feel these negative feelings, and I don't struggle with mental health crisis, but I always I think about I need to help my people, and whenever I feel sad and feel emotional, and I feel that I'm under stress, and I reach out to my friends and who have been supporting me in the recent years every day, and they help me, and I can overcome to the crisis that I have, and after that I can help other people better. And so we need to find a way and just be strong, because this is not the time to give up and give a space for I personally think this way. I don't give a space for that kind of feelings that that my situation gets worse, and I won't be, after that I won't be able to help others, and helping others and providing a service to others is my first priority to do. And for that reason I try to be strong and positive as much as I can.
That's a really good answer. And it brings in, again, something that I know we're going to talk about towards the end, about what people can be doing now to bring in that feeling of hopefulness. But before we get there, I wanted to ask you, a lot of people in the West have kind of surmised, or I think Human Rights Watch did a piece about the treatment that women in Taliban prisons were getting. And I've heard a lot of things from different NGO leaders about, sexual assault occurring for women just existing under the Taliban. I wondered, the West has a very vague idea of what kind of treatment women are getting right now. And have you known anyone who's been imprisoned by the Taliban, who's talked about what happened to them while they were in prison, or any other injustices that women have faced under Taliban rule that have not been reported by the media because there is no free press, as you say?
As you know, and you mentioned before, there is no justice for women in the country, and in every aspect of the life. And this is also the same in justice system. In courts of the Taliban, women are ignored. No one listens to them. Their cases has been denied, and they are not allowed to. Sometimes in some cases, they are not allowed to file a complaint or follow that. And yes, I heard in that the treatment of women in the Taliban prison is terrifying, because discussed with some female, with some women who were brave enough to file a complaint to the court of the Taliban, and if it was domestic violence, regarding the domestic violence, and when the Taliban judge read the case, and his decision was to give the women two options, which one of them is apologizing her husband, who is the perpetrator, and go back to the life of abuse and violence, and or if she didn't accept that, she should go to jail. And I heard of several cases that women didn't accept that, and they stayed in prison for months. And also, I spoke with some female protesters who have been protesting in the street, and their only crime was protesting. And they imprisoned by the Taliban, and they say also a horrible, and they shows a horrible picture of what happened to them in the prison, about torture and rapes, and also we have some reports. There's a report that recently, a country report recently published by the U.S. Department of State, that shows some statistics about the situation of women in prison of the Taliban. And I can say that it is very, as it mentioned in the report, it is about 3 provinces in the northern Afghanistan. And I can say that it is only one part of the country, and this is very little about all what is happening in the country. And because, in the report mentioned that out of 90 women imprisoned in 3 provinces, as I said before, Jowzjan, Faryab, and Samangan, 60 women had became pregnant because of the rape, and then they had forced abortion, and this is heartbreaking and horrible that can happen to a woman. And imagine that she is a woman who filed a complaint because of domestic violence of her husband. Now she is experiencing rape and torture in the Taliban prison.
That's horrifying. I haven't seen that report, but I'm going to go look for it immediately after this. One thing I had heard, and that was just unbelievably hard to find out, was, in the previous government, some women were able to get not divorces, but basically their marriage was invalidated under the law in some way. I can't remember the technicality that was used, but the Taliban then went and said, nope, that decision has been vacated, and now you need to return to your husbands. And people were concerned. This was right after the Taliban had reinstated their justice system, where they take people into giant arenas and stone them to death for adultery or homosexuality or murder or whatever. The Taliban courts have decided that, you're now you will face justice. But people were concerned that those women who had been given, an annulment basically, now were going to be stoned to death for being adulterous to their former husbands when that, because the Taliban had gone and decided that these decisions were no longer valid. And it's just a reminder there are so many. Taliban hypocrisy is so deep, because to say that adultery will get you stoned, but then the Taliban can rape you in prison. This is why the UN needs to act. The UN needs to decide that this is gender apartheid, and something must be done for all of these women whose crime was what? Especially in the north, their crime was probably what? Being Tajik? The hypocrisy of the Taliban really does run deep. If they can imprison women for having, bad morals, right? Or maybe bad hijab or whatever they want to say. They get to say whatever they want. And then they get to do whatever they want to women, because they don't see women as humans. They see women as there for their pleasure and creating more humans. And it's just a despicable outlook. And I just want Afghan women to have their rights again. I don't know why it's so hard and why the international community can't do more about this.
I want to share something now after you say. I'm not sure what crime those women have committed, and they are now in prison, and for what reason they are now in the jail. But who knows what was the crime? What was their crime? Taliban has the power, and they has the authority to do everything and that they want according to their interest, and they can imprison any woman they want, and they can torture them and beat them and do any kind of violence, and no one is asking, no one is there to follow and what is the truth. And who knows what was the crime? And they, as you say, they simply can tell everyone this woman did adultery or something immoral or anything else, and they can, the Taliban can show anything they want, and woman has no support to prove that they are innocent, and they don't deserve to experience all these in the prisons.
Absolutely. So I want to ask some big picture questions as we wind down here. What is it like for you to hear the Western world really being silent for the most part as the Taliban is stripping Afghan women of their rights?
That's a great question. I personally don't think that the Western are completely silent, because there are some efforts being made by our international friends and academics, scholars, lawyers, and organizations. A lot of people worked hard and tried to help, but specifically, everyone worked for women's rights in Afghanistan, and there were some humanitarian aid for people inside of the country who are struggling with hunger and with economic problems. But I believe that is not enough, because it has been 3 years that we are living in prison, and almost 3 years. It is not a little time to live like this, to lose every right, and it's like I can see that my future is destroyed, and it is not for me and for millions of other women and girls. And every day we experience and we witness the crimes that is happening against us, and we can't do anything, and there is no support from the Western governments. And if no one does anything, we will live more years like this in prison. And as I said, the future of a generation and our nation will be destroyed. And if Western governments try to do something to help us, I don't say they bring change for us. No, we want to work hard and do everything that we can, but we need support. And if we don't receive the support that we need to help to free our country and rebuild it, and otherwise we will think that the silence from the Western government on the gender apartheid and the gender prosecution that is happening to us every day, it is a kind of agreement with the Taliban. And if not, why they are not supporting us with real action?
I've wondered that often myself, especially when I hear, American leaders going to meet with the Taliban. And I understand that there are other reasons that they need to do that, but it just looks like they're recognizing them. And to me, it's abhorrent, because how can you recognize a government who treats half of its population this way? So, how important do you think it is for Afghan voices? I mean, the Taliban puts in a considerable amount of energy to make sure that Afghan voices do not get to leave the country, and that the only thing that leaves the country is their propaganda. How important do you think it is that voices from Afghanistan of dissent against the Taliban reach Western audiences right now?
I think it is people who are in the West, they can hear from Afghans from inside, because nowadays everyone has access to social media, and every day we can see videos and pictures of things that is happening. But I believe that we need to, it is important to create something meaningful, and by training those voices from inside of the country. And as we talked before, the freedom of press is there is no freedom of press under the Taliban, and no journalist and international and national journalists can work on women's rights and human rights violation. So I believe that it is important to hear from those who are from inside of the country, but as some people have access to social media, and they are raising awareness, and we need to train them with journalism skills, and for connecting and communicating with outside worlds. We need to train them with English skills and to perform better. And because people who are now in Afghanistan, they are witnessing everything, and they have the first-hand evidence. And if they can share them in a better form, and express that better, and I believe that helps much better than that. Better than what, dear mom? I forgot.
Your words they make perfect sense, and it's what I've tried to do too. I mean, just from talking, that's how I got to this podcast, is listening to Afghans on social media telling me about what they were dealing with as they were trying to submit SIV applications, and hearing about their children not being able to go to school, them not being able to go to work, their wives being out of work. And that's how I got so much of the news that then I was able to share with readers. And it was so important that if those people had not had access to social media, if they had not been able to speak English, those stories would not have gotten out. And there are so many more than I was even able to tell. I mean, millions of stories remain untold. And I still, though, I'm so grateful. And as we've been talking, I've thought this so many times since August of 2021. Imagine if this happened and there were no social media and we weren't able to chat like this, and you weren't able to reach out to other women from being in hiding to help them through mental health crises. I mean, what do you think this would be like without the internet?
I think it would be unbelievable because I personally feel in prison, lost everything, and lost all my achievement. And most of the time, we feel everything is pointless and meaningless. But connecting to our friends through the social media and the internet is a hope nowadays. I can study this way. I can provide support. I can provide service to people who need my service. And I can say that this is the only hope that we have nowadays.
Well, the last question I have for you is about, what other Afghans can do now to pursue a positive future for their country beyond Taliban rule, because the Taliban cannot stay in power forever. It cannot happen. So what can people do now to prepare themselves and to prepare the country for a time when the Taliban are no longer in power?
Thank you, dear mom. This is a great question to ask and discuss about it. This is a critical time, and we all Afghan are responsible to do anything that we can, because I believe that the darkness will not last forever, and we need to support each other. We need to connect and create networks and empower each other. I mean, I'm talking about women, and provide education, employment for people as much as we can, and talk to each other and find solutions. Of course, recognizing the problems and then provide us solutions for them. And I believe that we must do everything and to keep our achievements that we had in the last 20 years, also work for our future. And because, one day the Taliban will go, and after that, and at that time, we all need to be prepared and start to work harder and rebuild our community, which is collapsed from every aspect, from education, from justice system, from economic and government system. Everything is collapsed, I believe, nowadays. And we need to rebuild, and we need to be prepared for that. And for that, now we, all Afghans, men and women, inside and outside of the country, we must be united and support each other and work for the future, for now and for the future.
That was an amazing answer. It gave me the shivers when you said that you don't believe the darkness will last forever. I think it's really good to hear hope, and I think that's a message that everyone needs right now. I want to give you the final word. If there's anything I didn't ask, if there's anything you want to say to listeners, I'd love to give you the chance to just say it now before we close out. So the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to be in your podcast and speak about the pains and suffering that we are experiencing every day since we have been experiencing since August 2021, and you are allowing me that my voice be heard from inside of the country, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
It means the world to have you here. As I say often, it's one thing for me to talk about this. I'm not from the country. I'm not someone who's been raised in Afghanistan. And it's just so much more important to hear from you, from anyone who has lived their life in this country, who cares about it so deeply, about what that experience has been like. So it has been a huge honor to hear about your experience and to hear from so much of a closer perspective about what's happening inside of Afghanistan right now. So thank you for being here. And I just want to remind all of our listeners in Afghanistan or in third countries or who are, recent arrivals in the US, this podcast, we always want to have Afghan voices in every episode. And so if you want to submit a story, whether through a voice recording, through just talking for a few minutes as a short video, if you don't want to talk for a full episode, any way that you want to share your story, just send an email to our show address, which is the Afghanistan Project Podcast at gmail.com. And, once again, Amina, thank you for talking to my audience about what it's like for women in the country. And we really do wish you the best, and that darkness is soon gone, and that there's light for women and for men. There is no future for men where women are made to be small. So I want to thank every listener for sharing your time, as always, for supporting the people of Afghanistan. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure you're following our YouTube page and that you've enabled notifications so that you can hear about all of our future content. And Tasha Kaur, and hope to see you again soon.